I don't know about you, but I am so sick of seeing AI generated art. Not only is it polluting our physical environment and using up valuable resources such as land, water, energy, but it's also becoming a sensory pollution. And I am just so sick of seeing it. By now, you are probably already aware that a lot of the training for generative AI models is done using copyrighted materials without permission from the copyright holders. And creators are also not being compensated for this type of use. So, for this video, I want to dive more into some of the other aspects of generative AI art and human made art. So, I want to do kind of a bit of a comparison looking at some of the things that I think are missing from generative AI art, especially things like the process. I also want to talk a little bit about how art thrives in a relationship of reciprocity. And I think generative AI art is really missing that. Siding onto that relationship side of things, I also want to dive into how the way that we as humans take inspiration from other humans, from other art, and the way that we absolutely are influenced from other things, that's so different from how generative AI art is being trained. And there's that kind of fair use side of things that, yes, is being argued, but I don't think that's quite enough for the technology that we have now. And obviously, there are going to be some real life artists who do not follow all of these standards. There are people who absolutely have bad practices and stuff like that. That's not the point of this video. That would be a whole other video. So I know there are exceptions to these things. So I don't want to get too into semantics for this video, but when I'm talking about art and creation, I'm talking about things that humans have historically made for expression, for connection, for beauty, etc. And that may now be done by AI. So, recipe creation, I think, absolutely is an art form. Music, comedy, acting, drawing, digital art, design, podcast, video making, the lists go on and on. So, when I am talking about AI in this video, I am specifically talking about generative AI and using prompts to produce images, text, music, video, etc. So, in terms of the reasons that I see for using generative AI art, they're mainly that it's faster, it's easier, it's cheaper, it's more accessible. But when we have speed and ease as the kind of main draws, I think that we also are compromising on things or we are ignoring some of the other costs. So, in the case of things like, for example, fast fashion, there are costs to the environment, there are costs to the well being of other humans. With generative AI art, some of the things that I see us compromising include things like the quality of what we are making. Generative AI on the surface can make things that look good, that sound good, that seem to be fine. But I think we are also just getting such an influx of things that have no meaning, things that have no actual purpose to them. And we're also just seeing so much slop that doesn't need to exist, that does not need to pollute anywhere. We have things like that Chicago newspaper that published a reading list that included fake books, and AI just made them up. I think things like that just slip through the cracks when you are allowing AI to take over so much of what we are seeing for art. And we're just seeing more and more garbage. We're just being fed more and more crap. We are so used to consuming trash. We are so used to consuming crap and trying to filter through it. Like, think of like how much we just consume advertisement wise now. We are just seeing so much competing for our attention. And this is just another thing, but I hate it. I hate that this is another thing that is just being thrown at us without quality control, without people actually caring about what they're making. So, and with generative AI art, I think a lot of the time we are looking at things as an output primarily. We are not looking at the process, we are looking at what it looks like on the surface. And sure, that can look fine, it can seem to meet a purpose, but The purpose of output, I don't think, is the only reason to ever create stuff. I think there's such value to the aspects of art that include things like connection and the aspects of art that include things like the process of creation. Like, yes, the end product is nice, but the process is what helps you to actually learn things about yourself, to challenge yourself. And I think to some degree, we recognize this as people. There is joy in that process. While yes, it may not always be enjoyable, sometimes that little bit of resistance is actually just perfect. Like, why do a puzzle when you could just have a picture? Why read a book when you could just read a summary of a book? Or why read a book when you can watch a movie? Why watch a movie when you could just watch a YouTube summary of the movie? Why do people enjoy the building and painting part of Warhammer? That process part is probably one of the closest ways that a lot of people get in their adult lives to play. With AI, it's so focused on output, but at the cost of all of these other background things. And because we don't have these background things, it's hard for me to care. I've been getting a lot more into DVDs again, just in part for like the behind the scenes stuff. Recently, I watched for the first time in my life Team America, which is not like a good movie, but the effort that they put into like all the puppet stuff that they did in that movie is wild to me. Like the special features of that movie just gave me so much more of an appreciation for the movie. With AI art, we don't have that stuff to give us more reason to care. So another thing I worry about is that we are losing things that we may not see how much we've lost until later. If we are not still pushing ourselves, if we are not still trying to do things with some resistance, if we're not challenging ourselves, if we're not trying to actually understand things, we are probably going to end up losing things. Like how we have lost so much movement in our lives. It's snuck away from us in ways. We've gotten convenience. We've gotten all these things that basically eliminate so much of the need for our bodies to do different things. And because of that, we are moving so much less, especially if you have like a busy life. Getting that movement back in a way that helps us to maintain a good level of health is difficult. So my worry is that as we use AI to replace so much of the creative process, of the thinking aspects of creating things, we are going to start to see huge gaps in like how we use our brains. And just from like a brain health perspective, that kind of concerns me. Like there's so much benefit that we get from challenging ourselves. And the more that we avoid that, the more I am scared for the future of our brains. So one other thing that I think AI kind of takes away from this creative process is that journey of discovery and how so much great art has been formed, not based on actually implementing an idea the way it was originally kind of birthed in somebody's head, but by going through the process and making adjustments through that. Like, how many great books exist, but not in the way that an author originally planned it? I love reading books about writing because authors talk so much about how they will have to change what they wanted to write because it didn't align with the character that they were writing. It wasn't true to the person that they were actually creating. And I think that is so cool. And I don't think you can do that with just demanding an output. You know, we're missing so much of that bumbling and messing around that makes beautiful art, I think, that makes art that really speaks to us as people. Let's talk about art and how it's different from AI art in the way that we have reciprocity. I'm out here outside because I think it's easy to see reciprocity in the natural world. We have like bees that are attracted to flowers. They are getting pollen and nectar from these flowers, and they are also helping to pollinate so many plants. There are so many things that grow because we have pollinators, and that's just
just one example of so many things in this beautiful natural world. And I think one system that really thrives with reciprocity is art. I think art is this like gift. Even if you're paying for it, it still to me is a gift. It still to me is something that somebody could have chosen to not share with the world, but they have. As appreciators of art, there's that important support role where even if you have, say, paid the price of admission for art, I think there's still a desire, at least for me, to still show more support if I am really a fan of something. I think that that cost of admission, especially now, it can be like so low that I think it's important to try to kind of pay back for some of the benefit that we can receive from art, some of the inspiration we can receive from art. And I know it's hard to monetarily support all the things we want to. I definitely cannot monetarily support all the things that I want to. But I think it's important to kind of have discussions about these things, to share things that really call out to us. So much of art is about connection, and so much of art is about sharing with others, and so much of art is about growing to something that existed into something new and pushing each other and, seeing something that somebody else has done and saying, hey, that means that person has helped me to see that I can create something differently than I thought I could. And that might open a door to something totally new. I think in general, creative communities understand that they thrive as communities. They don't thrive as just products. And as much as we've been kind of fed that everything is a product, I think it's important to think of art as more than that, and product as this part of this gigantic web that we are all connected in. And I know this might sound cheesy, but I truly believe this is one of the big differences, because nobody creates anything without other people's influence. And that can be from artists, and that can be from people who are just supporters. Look at pretty much any human-made book, and you will likely see acknowledgments. You will likely see a book that acknowledges maybe artists who have inspired this person to make something. Maybe it's family, friends, people who have believed in this person making this art. I think that just shows how connected all these things are. For us to get one book, how many different things play into this one thing existing? As we think of this reciprocity, I think it kind of ties into this idea of how we steal like artists rather than just stealing ideas like AI.
So this phrase, steal like an artist, was kind of popularized with the book titled Steal Like an Artist by Kleon, which is a book with tips for creatives. And a couple of the first chapters kind of talk about this idea of idea theft, and that we don't come up with ideas in a vacuum, and we absolutely do have to be influenced by other people. That's normal, and we should be kind of leaning into that in a way. And the term steal is kind of just used a lot by artists to describe how they get ideas from other people, how they take inspiration from other people. So it's not like advocating for taking and saying it's yours and plagiarizing. That's not what the essence of stealing like an artist is about. There's a few points that Austin Kleon's book, Steal Like an Artist, talks about that I think are kind of relevant in terms of this discussion about AI. So one of the main ideas is that we are collectors. We are collectors of ideas that we like, things that inspire us, things that make us want to create. And every new idea really is just kind of coming from influence from things that we are inspired by, and that we should really be selective about these things. And this is one of the big differences, is we have that choice of what we hold on to, what we think is worth collecting and maybe morphing into our own thing. With AI, we don't choose how these models are trained. We do not choose the quality of what is put into them, and we do not choose why they matter. There's lots of biases, there's lots of things that are basically collected by other people. And in some ways, that's more like a hoarding of ideas to me than it is about a selective collecting of ideas. Another idea from this book is that we should take from others, but also use our own voice. Hopefully, we are adding something transformative. We are adding our own voice to it. And even if we are needing to learn from others first, we're hopefully using that to find our own style. And with I think it's hard to have a unique style. I think it's hard to have a unique perspective because there's so much that's out of our control in the way that AI generates things. And it also suggests when you're trying to like take ideas from people or when you're trying to take inspiration from people to try and get more into like what their mindset is, what the thinking behind what they're doing is, rather than just looking at output, rather than just looking at very superficial things, which is like the opposite of what AI does. Because AI is looking at output, right? It's not looking at a process, it's not looking at a why. This book also talks about good theft versus bad theft. So it talks about good theft qualities being things like honoring, studying from artists, stealing from many instead of one source, crediting, transforming, and remixing, where bad theft is degrading, skimming, stealing from one source, plagiarizing, imitating, and ripping off. So I would say that AI doesn't check all of those boxes for bad theft or good theft. But I would say that it definitely feels like it is imitating. It feels like it's ripping off of artists. And it also feels like it's kind of skimming. It is skimming the surface. The main thing that stands out to me is it's really not crediting these creators that it's taking from. It's really not honoring them. One other thing that I find kind of amusing, funny, a little hypocritical is how it seems like a lot of the people endorsing generative AI or the companies themselves seem to want to be credited and want to be recognized, that their work should be protected from stealing. Hmm. Jason M. Allen, the guy who won first place at the Colorado Art Fair competition with an AI image, had requested for copyright protection and was denied and sued over the copyright rejection for his work. There was also OpenAI claiming that DeepSeek stole from their model, and they want to be credited, right? They want to have the users of their stuff crediting the model that they're using. So it's like you want to be credited, but you're not going to acknowledge all of the data sets that you have taken from all of the people who have contributed to what you have. You're not even going to like give them like a little bit of a, hey, this is where this came from. So AI companies have been arguing that it would be pretty much impossible to build a large language model the way that they are right now without scraping copyrighted materials from the internet. So there was a group of researchers who tried, and well, it wasn't easy. And it didn't get up to where we are right now with models. It showed that, like, there is some potential to do things a little bit more ethically. I will leave a link to the text on this in case anyone is interested. And it looks like it also gives like the details from a more technical standpoint that are way above my comprehension. So let's chat about fair use. I am not from the States, I'm from Canada, but we have a similar-ish exception for copyright use in Canada called fair dealing. I'm going to talk about fair use because that is what a lot of the AI companies are citing. And it is a bit of a judgment call. Like, it's not like it's all black and white. And there's a few different factors that are weighed against each other. So one of them is purpose, and things like criticism or comment or teaching or research are more favorable than some other purposes. And the character of use is also considered. So commercial versus transformative, educational, nonprofit kind of stuff. Secondly is the nature of the copyrighted work. So what is the copyrighted work? Thirdly is the amount and the substantiality of the portion used in relation to the copyrighted work as a whole. And then, fourthly, is the effect of the use upon the potential market for or value of the copyrighted work. Now, I am not a lawyer. Um, but to me, there's a few things that kind of stand out here. For one, the purpose of the use is kind of concerning to me because it's not really like, yes, it can be used for teaching, scholarship, etc. But it can also be used for commercial purposes, and it is used for commercial purposes. There are AI companies who are charging for people to use their services. So they are getting paid off of this stuff. The other thing that really stands out is that effect of use upon the potential market for or value of the copyrighted work, which I think is a big concern for a lot of creative people. So, I'm not an expert in this stuff, but there are people who are experts in this stuff who have, or judges and copyright office employees who have put some insight into this stuff. There was a document that came out in May in pre-publication version from the United States Copyright Office, and that document is 113 pages long and does acknowledge that fair use probably doesn't cover it all. And it didn't go like as hard, like totally hard on AI. Like it did kind of say legislation in certain aspects might not be the greatest for like a blanket solution. And so it wasn't like blatantly like, hey, everyone needs to stop using generative AI now or anything like that. From what I gained reading it, could be unrelated, could be related, I don't know. But the Copyright Office head was fired after this document came out. And then another professional was a US judge who was weighing in regards to the lawsuit with Meta and Scraped Books. This judge states, "You have companies using copyrighted materials to create product that is capable of producing an infinite number of competing products. You are dramatically changing, you might even say obliterating, the market for that person's work. And you're saying that you don't even have to pay a license to that person. I don't understand how that could be fair use." So I thought that was a pretty good statement from this judge. However, there was also this part kind of brought up later, basically saying that they would have to prove that there was a change on the demand for like specific books. And I guess that would be challenging. Especially like right now, it would be challenging to prove that with that set bit, right? Like it would be easier to say, like, as a whole, that AI is doing this, but how do you argue it for like one specific book? How do you know like what the sales were going to be and how they've changed? Like that is a hard thing to argue. So that was a little concerning to me. So while I don't agree that the way that these generative AI models have been trained is fair use, under my understanding of fair use, as a non-lawyer, as someone who's not from the States, I do see that it seems like there's going to be little loopholes that people are going to try and go through. And it also seems like money is, as money always is, a extreme motivator. And I have seen that governments do seem to be a little more motivated in the getting ahead in the AI game than they are in actually safeguarding things, actually making sure that we are using these things responsibly, actually making sure that we are protecting people from this technology being very damaging. Yeah, it doesn't seem like that is where we are heading. I know that this technology is here. I know that there are employers that are demanding people use AI. I know that in some cases, AI might actually be great. For instance, if it solves climate change, if it helps to reverse the damage we've done on the planet, fantastic. If we find solutions to health issues that we have definitely not been able to solve, fantastic. If we are able to do really great things with AI, that's awesome. However, I also don't love that a lot of the uses for AI are for manipulation, that they are for people trying to get ahead in silly little ways, that they are potentially changing so much about how we think as a society. I just recently had a person I was talking to. I was literally like talking about like just brainstorming a few ideas and things that like to me, I would just like think them through, write a few ideas down and just go for it. And they were like, "Oh yeah, I'll talk to ChatGPT about that." I was like, "What? What? You don't need to use AI for that. You do not need to outsource so much of your brain for that. You can just try and have original thought. You can try and just like think a thing and try it out. That is an option." So it scares me that as a society, that might be kind of where we're headed in terms of how we are thinking, that we're like, yeah, I'm just going to ask AI what they think about this. And that's how I'm going to base my decision. Ugh, and like doing most of our research with AI, I don't know, I don't love it. So the reason that I think this video matters is we are living in a time where legislation has not at all caught up to where we are at. We are dealing with technology where people were asking if they could, but I don't think they were really asking if they should. Like the Jurassic Park quote, as people, we have to choose to regulate ourselves. So I think it is so important to reflect on what we value. So for me, the reason I'm doing this video is because I value human-made art. And I think we do have to advocate for human-made things. We absolutely have to try to keep the internet a human space as much as we can. I know there's so much shit that's infiltrating the internet. We've got things like the dead internet theory. I don't think we're quite there yet. Art will absolutely still exist. I think people will always still create, but the connection bit might get harder and harder, especially on the internet. We had a technology that really helped to connect people. And I think it still is to some degree. I have to hope that it still is because I'm doing this. But I think we have to fight for it, and we have to be mindful about how the choices we make can change things. So I'm just going to go through a list of things that I think may be helpful, that I think may help to protect artists at least a little bit. If you think of other things, absolutely, please leave a comment with your suggestions as well. It would be great to get some more tips, because these are just things that I saw as I was planning for this video, or that I thought of as I was planning for this video. So I am only one person, and hopefully we are of several more. So for one, create as resistance, create to connect, create for humanity, create as a gift to yourself and to other people. Number two, try to protect the art that you do create. Don't give permission for AI training unless, you're getting paid for it, compensated it, and you totally trust the company. There are some ways to protect certain art forms to try and prevent AI scraping, or prevent AI from scraping it properly, called Glaze and Nightshade, which are developed by the University of Chicago. From their website, they say ultimately their goal is to ensure the continued vitality of human artists and to restore balance and ensure a healthy coexistence between AI and human creatives, where the human creatives retain agency and control over their work products and their use. Another thing I think we should all be doing is supporting human creators. Interact with their stuff online. Support financially if and when you can. Comment on things, share things, interact with things, promote stuff. You get it. I also found out about a new social media site that is for sharing art. It's meant to be a platform that says, hey, here's all these images that are made by humans. So it's called Kara. Basically, they have two main stances on AI that they put on their information page for this Kara website. Number one is that they currently don't believe that the way generative AI tools are being used right now is ethical. They don't love that there's a lot of ethical and privacy issues associated with it right now. In the event that legislation does actually protect artists, then they do believe that AI content should be clearly labeled because the public should always be able to search for human-made art and media easily. So love that. Number 4 is to vote with your time, your money, and your attention. And I think one of the big things is like, be mindful of how algorithms suck our time. And I know like it's so easy to get caught in algorithms, but I think it's also important to like remember what artists you like and maybe make a list of them somewhere or just wherever you're like following certain artists. Every once in a while, just like go through your list of people that you follow or that you like or artists that you are fans of and just like check if they've done new stuff. Check if they've got stuff that you can support. Because you probably will like their stuff more than the stuff that you're consuming that's just like from an algorithm. And it's probably going to be more beneficial. You might also catch stuff that you missed. And don't consume AI generated slop. Just don't interact with it. Don't buy stuff from things that have been advertised with AI. If you don't use generative AI in your art, if you are someone who creates stuff, I think it's a good idea to let it be known like what your stance on AI is. Because we live in a time where like I truthfully, as soon as I see a creator like using AI, I'm like, oh, and I don't really want to look at their stuff anymore. And maybe that's not like the perfect response to things, but at this point, I would rather look at things that are made by humans, and I don't want to even spend like a second looking at AI generated slop. I would rather look at somebody's bad drawings that have like personality, that have life to them than an AI generated drawing. I don't care like how much more technically good the AI generated image might be, I would still rather look at the human one. I think in the current landscape of things, I think it is important to have a stance because right now things are so self-regulated. There is nobody telling you that you shouldn't be using generative AI art from a legislation standpoint right now, right? You're not being told, hey, don't do this. And I think another thing we have to do is to support those looking for better solutions. So this may be supporting AI companies who have a very firm stance on compensating artists. This may also be supporting groups who are advocating for different types of legislation, who are trying to help artists to be compensated. I think it's good to show support for companies speaking out against certain AI use. So for example, Deezer has launched an AI music detection tool, and they are removing fully AI generated content from algorithmic recommendations. I know that streaming platforms also have some of their own issues in terms of compensating artists, and that's a whole other ball game to talk about. But I would love to know if you know of any other companies that have a really great statement about AI, etc. And thanks so much for joining me for this far from perfect, but made by a human video. Thanks. Take care. Bye.